Hi, and welcome back. My name is Deborah Shalette Wilson,
I'm Kathy McCommon.
And I'm Ann Riddels.
and together we're the School of Soul. In our last video, the first one of the series that we're going to be doing on human growth and development, with the psychological and the mental parts of ourselves, we gave you an overview. And in this video, we're going to get into more detail about what's considered the stage of development that's called the rock and mineral stage.
And this is the first stage of development. And these are people who are very rigid.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yes, you
Oh,
are.
No, I'm
yeah,
not.
yeah.
I'm not. I'm not.
No,
Mm-mm.
yes. You need to accept it.
And this is a perfect example in that there's no getting through to these people. You can have everyone in their life trying to get through to them, and they will not budge. It's like putting a rock somewhere. It doesn't budge. It stays where it's put. And these people who are stuck at this youngest stage of development have been so traumatized that they are in the frozen, as in fight, flight, or freeze, of animal threat response. They're so frozen
No,
that they never move from that frozen state. No matter how much evidence, no matter how much you're screaming
Convincing,
or
everybody
crying,
telling you.
they could
yes.
even be dying. They do not budge.
I'm not. I'm not.
Exactly. So we all have these people in our friends, families, neighborhoods, whatever, turn on the news. I, for example, had a mineral stage father, and one way I became clear of just how disabled he was is, in retrospect, he would only allow his children to be like him. So he was a chemical engineer. My two older brothers became engineers. I became a chemist. Now, not my sort of thing, but when you have a mineral stage parent, they will not allow anything else but their way. And their way is what they learned from trauma. Overwhelming trauma molded them into that utterly rigid shape. And they're frozen there, too frightened to move out of it, lest they be harmed yet again. So they're stuck in whatever minimized their trauma.
Would you say they're just kind of on autopilot?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The image is either a rock rolling down a hill, meaning the path they just keep on going on, or they can be like a machine, robotic. If you say A, they say B. You do C, they do D. Like a machine, utterly programmed life existence. They're stuck in post-traumatic stress, ever recreating their trauma or avoiding what they've just done.
That reminds me of when I worked for the Department of Human Services, which I came to see as not very humane. But we were, if I ever called to ask a question from one of the other departments when things weren't working, it didn't matter that they weren't working. It didn't matter that the job that I had to do in this personnel department didn't matter that it was not getting done because people didn't understand the paperwork. But when I would call people, it would be like they would just robotically repeat policy. Well, we can't do it that way.
Exactly. And I was once in a hospital. A little girl was brought in, serious condition. She had just been discharged from the hospital, so they moved her directly back to the ward where she had been hospitalized. I was given the role of going to get the medical records. So trying to get the medical records to the ward, the woman said, I can't do that. Protocol says it has to go to the emergency room, nowhere else. I said, this little girl is dying. I was in tears begging her to give me the medical records. She would not because of policy. Now, this is important to know about the mineral stage of development. It doesn't matter if someone's dying. Policy is what matters.
Now we see that a lot in government now. A lot of our government institutions are like that. Policy is everything, and humanity is removed.
Yeah, very much secondary.
Yeah, I call that the rational irrational, because if you don't include all of who you are, to me, that's irrational.
Absolutely.
Well, also in this mineral stage, it's kind of like this jar here. It's very pretty. You know, you've got your landscape, which would be your life or life, but the ball is empty. The jar is empty. So there's no emotions, there's no spirituality, there's no expansion of the human consciousness. They can say words like, I love you, but there's nothing inside of those words. It's empty, just like this jar.
Immovable.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you have mentioned the ball, because what they say they are and what they are is totally in contrast. So you have to have some discernment to see what's inside what they're putting forward. But if you're stuck in a young stage development yourself, you don't have that ability. And so many people are fooled by mineral stagers again and again and again.
Would you say that the mineral stage is your more severe narcissism?
I label narcissism as the next stage of development, because narcissists can be so charming, and they have a bit more going for them than the mineral stage, which is the barest, merest facade of humanity. And you just have to go a little past the surface, and oh my goodness, it's not there, because they had to abandon their humanity to handle all the trauma they had growing up. So whatever they say, these are incredibly traumatized individuals who have evacuated from their humanity to avoid their traumatic experiences, meaning they had physical trauma so that they don't feel physically like a normal human would. They've been emotionally abused, so they've evacuated from their heart and they don't feel their emotions. Any emotion, they say, is a programmed emotion. Like growing up with my father, I was programmed to say, if someone said, Ann, how are you? I would say, fine, thank you. How are you? And was I fine? No. How can you be fine with a mineral stage father? But that's what I was programmed to say. So their emotions are not true to their identity. And their thoughts, too, are what has been programmed in rather than what they're actually thinking.
Yeah, and it's also lopsided because, you know, it's like, well, I grew up and it's like you're always supposed to put on a happy face. You know, how are you? Oh, I'm just fine. Thank you.
A rigid, automatic
But
response.
a lot of stuff was going on in my house that wasn't fine.
Exactly.
But that was the facade that had to be put up.
Exactly. So think of these people as a facade. I view it as like a stony wall. That's the image, and there's no getting past the wall.
So if you have people in your life that seem to be immovable, they probably are.
And
stone cold. Have you heard that term?
Stone cold.
And they are hard to be in relationship with. So if you're in a relationship with a mineral stager, it's like being stuck between a rock and a hard place. And the one thing, too, about knowing the different stages of development, you know what to expect. So what do you expect from someone in a mineral stage?
Whatever they've been doing.
Yes,
They're just going to keep doing it.
They will not change. That's right.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because how many women stay stuck in relationships expecting that if they do enough, that person's going to change. Lots of luck's all I got to say.
To me, an image is the Colorado River forming the Grand Canyon that took, 5 or 6 million years?
Million years, yeah.
So it takes a lot of patience to move a mineral stager.
Yeah, so
Over
if
many,
you've got
many years.
5 to 6 million years, then
I got it.
yeah, there you go.
But that's one of the reasons we need that mineral stage part of us to keep relentlessly working on these people so they can budge. And part of the School of Soul is helping people to understand each stage of development so they know how to help people progress. In any way you can budge a mineral stager, like even getting them to have something different for breakfast. Switching from granola to oatmeal.
Baby steps is what I call that. Little tiny baby steps.
Let's say that you get to the higher stages of development. Because we're a whole person, we still have those stages running around in us. Is there any time that a mineral stage could maybe serve us?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I can think of one time recently when I wanted to clean out a storage building and was getting some pushback, and I just made an unmovable statement. This is going to happen. You might as well get on board. Would you say that was kind of a mineral perspective?
Yes, that's when we
Yes.
use our mineral stager.
I was not budging.
Yes.
The storage buildings were going to be cleaned out.
Mhm.
Will you rob a bank with me? Absolutely not. Today, tomorrow, and forever.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
so the mineral stage has its polarities.
Mm-hmm.
When there's trauma, it's on the stuck. I mean, it's stuck, but it's also the trauma is part of the problem. And so it's just stuck in that frozen place. Really, I guess that no matter what developmental stage we're in, if there's trauma there, there's a stuckness that we kind of keep. Unless we get out of the stuckness, then we just carry it to the next developmental stage.
Well, that part of us stays stuck. And as you've heard me talk about, we have parts that can be stuck at all different ages. And it's actually the stage of woman when we typically bring to consciousness these most primitive parts of ourselves that have been so incredibly traumatized. Because then we have the strength of body, heart, and mind to take on just how damaged these parts of us are and work through that trauma. And that's how we move them, is by working through the trauma,
So-
what our School of Soul is about.
Yeah. And so actually you could have many experiences that keep you stuck in the mineral stage and other experiences that don't. So it gets kind of complex.
And let's say someone in the animal stage has some overwhelming trauma. Well, they might switch into the mineral stage to take on that overwhelming trauma because it won't be overwhelming to a rock.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the physical feeling to feel the beating or whatever happened, the emotional feeling to take the emotional devastation. They don't have the mental capacity to deal with the confusion of the horror of the trauma. So, and then they can go back after the trauma into their animal stage and be able to handle it much better.
Mm-hmm.
That happens commonly.
Right. So when this part of our mineral stage becomes more healed and whole, and we have access and awareness of that part of ourselves, then it can become something healthy and setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And to be utterly relentless in standing up to these people in our society, because they are relentless in recreating their trauma and can destroy things very, very quickly.
And so that's part of our own awakening, is to be able to see where other people are at in a way, to see the threat that they may be posing, so we can maybe do something about it.
Because if you have a rock in the family, are they causing damage? Absolutely, if they're stuck in this mineral stage of development. Absolutely. There's no question.
Yeah, because people are walking around it, or not even looking at it. I mean, doing different things to not necessarily, I guess, call it out.
Or I'm thinking about, remember when painted rocks were popular?
Oh, yeah.
People stuck in younger
rock
stages.
pad.
Yeah, people stuck at younger stages of development can paint all sorts of things on these and think that they're nice people when no.
So that's why I thought that was so odd. I was not in a mineral stage to appreciate it. I thought that was such an odd behavior.
What was an odd behavior?
Painting faces and rocks becoming your friends and carrying
Oh,
them around.
yeah.
Oh yeah, they're not exactly soft and cuddly, are they?
No.
Not in the least. But I do remember when that was a fad.
I do too.
Yeah.
I didn't participate.
Me neither. I did not.
I guess I wasn't into that stage at that time. Yeah. So in this stage, when it's healed and whole and complete, when you're complete on those experiences, those traumatic experiences, and you have integrated those into who you are, and you have access to all of that, so you can use them or not use them.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I like what you just said, access to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So having access to all of these parts of ourselves does give us a wholeness and a completeness that we just can't have any other way.
Yeah. And to me, that's how we really get free.
Yeah.
And then we can really connect more to the soulfulness of who we are and let that manifest in this world that seems to be screaming for it, for
Yes.
more soulfulness.
Yes.
Okay, anything anyone want to add?
No, I think we've pretty much, I think you have a good idea of what
Yeah.
the mineral stage is. Its benefits and its not so much benefits.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you again for being with us, and we will see you on our third video when we get into the next stage of development, which is the vegetable stage. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.